Welcome to my channel, Value Old Coins. Here you'll find videos about rare, valuable, and interesting coins from around the world. Watch the videos, learn about coin history, coin values, and unique facts you won't find anywhere else. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. It really helps us grow and bring you even more amazing coin content. Thanks for watching. Let's get started. The Elizabeth II 1968 10 pence coin, inscribed with a Latin legend Elizabeth II D times G times Reg times F times D times 1968, is a particularly important piece in the history of British coinage, as it belongs to the very early issues of decimal currency in the United Kingdom. Prior to 1971, Britain operated on the traditional pre-decimal system of pounds, shillings, and pence, a structure that dated back centuries. In this older system, 1 pound was equal to 20 shillings, and 1 shilling was equal to 12 pence, making a total of 240 pence in pound. By the mid-20th century, this cumbersome system was becoming increasingly outdated, especially as trade and finance became more internationally interconnected. Countries with decimal systems, where currency was divided more simply into units of 10 or 100, found great efficiency in accounting and trade. Thus, in the 1960s, Britain made a historic decision to move toward decimalization, and in preparation for this monumental change, new coinage was gradually introduced. The 1968 10 pence coin was one of these pre-decimalization issues, circulating alongside the old money so that the public could become familiar with the new system well in advance of Decimal Day, which officially arrived on the 15th of February 1971. The 1968 10 pence coin was struck in cupronickel, an alloy consisting of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving it a silvery appearance with durability suitable for circulation. The coin was relatively large compared to modern 10p coins, measuring 28.5 millimeters in diameter and weighing 11.31 grams. Its substantial size and weight were intentionally designed to correspond to the pre-decimal 2-shilling coin, florin, which had been in use since the 19th century. This deliberate equivalence was a clever measure to ease the transition. The public could accept that one 2-shilling piece was now also a 10 pence piece, thereby smoothing confusion between old and new coinage. For this reason, the 10 pence remained interchangeable with the florin for decades, until later coinage reforms made the coin smaller. On the obverse side, the head side of the coin, we see the youthful portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by the sculptor Arnold Machin OBEIA. This effigy, introduced in 1968 and used widely on decimal coins, shows a queen wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, a wedding gift she had received in 1947. The tiara, light and elegant, became one of her most iconic pieces of jewelry in official portraits. Around her portrait runs a legend, Elizabeth II D times G times Reg times F times D times 1968. The inscription is in Latin, standing for Elizabeth II Dei Gratia Regina Fide Defensa, which translates to Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith. This traditional titulature reflects the monarch's constitutional and religious role within the United Kingdom, underscoring both her authority as Queen and her status as Supreme Governor of the Church of England. On the reverse side, the tail side of the coin, the design was created by Christopher Ironside, a skilled artist and designer who contributed to the imagery of Britain's new decimal currency. For the 10 pence, Ironside chose a lion passing garden, also known as a heraldic lion. This symbol is one of the most recognizable and traditional heraldic emblems of England, representing strength, courage, and the enduring monarchy. The lion is shown walking to the left, with its right forepaw raised and its head facing the viewer, an iconic medieval image that has adorned coats of arms for centuries. Above the lion, the denomination new pence is inscribed, while below is the number 10, indicating its value in the new decimal system. The inclusion of the word new was necessary during the transition period to distinguish it from the old pre-decimal pence, but this wording was dropped in 1982 when the public was fully accustomed to decimalization, and the coin simply bore the word 10 pence. Historically, the 1968 issue of the 10 pence was a landmark, as it was among the first decimal coins ever produced for general circulation in the UK. Alongside the 5 pence, which was equivalent to a shilling, the 10 pence acted as a bridge between old and new money. Their introduction in 1968, 3 years before decimalization, gave the public time to adapt to the size, feel, and appearance of decimal currency while still using them interchangeably with older coins. The British public, long accustomed to complex mental arithmetic in the pre-decimal system, had to adjust to the simpler decimal structure, where 100 pence equaled £1. The government ran public information campaigns, including television advertisements, posters, and even school lessons, to ensure people understood the changes. The 10 pence coin thus played a crucial role not only as a medium of exchange, but as an educational tool in one of Britain's most significant monetary reforms. From a numismatic perspective, the 1968 10 pence is not a particularly rare coin, as millions were struck for circulation. However, it holds strong historical significance as part of the very first wave of decimal coinage. Collectors often value these early decimal coins for their role in British monetary history, especially when preserved in uncirculated or proof condition. In 1968, the Royal Mint also issued a number of proof sets containing these coins, allowing collectors and the public to obtain pristine examples of the new designs before they entered circulation. Over time, these sets became popular among coin enthusiasts who appreciate the transition period in British numismatics. The physical characteristics of the coin, its large size, weight, and metallic composition, also make it a memorable piece for those who use it in daily life. Many Britons who lived through the 1960s and 1970s recall the heavy 10 pence with nostalgia, especially since the coin was eventually reduced in size in 1992 to a much smaller version, measuring just 24.5 millimeters and weighing 6.5 grams. The larger 1968 to 1992 version has since disappeared from circulation, though it remains legal tender, making older examples a tangible link to the era of decimalization. Culturally, the coin encapsulates Britain in the late 1960s, a nation modernizing its economy and financial systems while still proudly displaying its royal and heraldic traditions. The coin's obverse represents continuity in monarchy, with a young Queen Elizabeth II beginning the second decade of her reign, while the reverse symbolizes national pride through the heraldic lion. The simple inscription "New Pence" reflects the novelty of decimalization, a reminder that this was a new beginning for British money, an adjustment period where every detail was designed to guide the public through change with as little disruption as possible. In conclusion, the Elizabeth II DG Reg FD 1968 10 pence coin is much more than just a piece of metal. It is a milestone in the history of British coinage, bridging centuries of tradition. The Elizabeth II DG Reg FD 1971 10 pence coin stands as a cornerstone of British monetary reform, marking the year that decimalization finally became law. The legend on the obverse reads Elizabeth II D times G times Reg times F times D times 1971, a Latin inscription meaning Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith. This traditional titulature has been used in varying forms on British coins for centuries, reflecting both the sovereign's constitutional authority and her position as head of the established church. The date 1971 is historically significant because it was the first year in which the decimal system was fully adopted, replacing the complex system of 240 pence to the pound with a modern and more efficient structure of 100 pence to pound. Prior to decimalization, Britain had clung to a monetary system that was deeply traditional but increasingly impractical in a modern economy. A pound consisted of 20 shillings, and each shilling contained 12 pence, creating a total of 240 pence in the pound. While this system had its origins in medieval times, it was complicated for everyday users and businesses. International trade, which increasingly operated on decimal currencies, highlighted the need for reform. After years of debate, consultation, and planning, the decision was taken in the 1960s to convert Britain's currency into a decimal form. The date was set, the 15th of February, 1971, Decimal Day. On that day, the British public awoke to a brand new monetary system. To prepare, certain decimal coins had already been issued as early as 1968, including the 5 pence and 10 pence. But 1971 marked the first year of official circulation, when these coins functioned within the new framework of money. The 10 pence coin of 1971 was particularly important because it served as a decimal successor to the old 2-shilling coin, florin. Since a florin was worth 1/10 of a pound under the old system, it was naturally chosen to become the 10p in the new system. To make the transition seamless, the decimal 10p coin was struck to the same dimensions, weight, and alloy as a florin. It measured 28.5 millimeters in diameter, weighed 11.31 grams, and was composed of cupra nickel, 75% copper, 25% nickel, giving it a bright silvery appearance. Its milled, reeded edge was both a practical feature, deterring fraud through clipping, and a traditional design choice that gave continuity with older silver coinage. This decision to maintain continuity ensured that the public could use both the florin and the 10 new pence interchangeably during the transition, which greatly reduced confusion. The obverse head side of the coin features a second official portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, designed by the sculptor Arnold Machen OBEIA, introduced in 1968. This portrait became one of the most recognizable and enduring images of the monarch. The Queen is depicted facing right, wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, a sparkling diamond tiara that had been a wedding gift to her in 1947 and one of her most frequently worn pieces of jewelry. Machen's effigy presents a youthful and serene queen, radiating elegance and confidence during the early decades of her reign. This image was widely admired for its refined balance between tradition and modernity, and it appeared not only on British coinage but also on the coins of many Commonwealth nations. Around her portrait runs a legend with her titles and the date. The reverse tail side of the 1971 coin was designed by Christopher Ironside, the celebrated artist tasked with creating the new decimal coinage designs. For the 10 new pence, Ironside selected the lion passant guardant, one of the most important heraldic symbols of England. The lion is shown walking to the left, with its right forepaw raised and its head facing forward, gazing directly at the viewer. This emblem has a long history, appearing in the royal arms of England since the reign of Richard the Lionheart in the 12th century. It symbolizes bravery, dignity, sovereignty, and continuity of the monarchy. Above the lion appears the inscription New Pence, while beneath it is a denomination, the numeral 10. At the time, the word new was essential to distinguish the decimal coins from pre-decimal ones, but by 1982 this was dropped and replaced with simply 10 pence. Thus, the 1971 coin firmly belongs to the transitional period of Britain's numismatic history. The 1971 10 new pence coin played an essential role in the public's day-to-day experience of decimalization. It was relatively large and heavy, which gave it a substantial presence in the hand, similar to the florin that it replaced. People used it for everyday purchases such as bus fares, newspapers, and groceries. Shops and banks had prepared well for Decimal Day, and although there was some initial hesitation and confusion, the British public adapted remarkably quickly to the new money. In fact, the government had undertaken extensive public information campaigns in the years leading up to 1971, including posters, leaflets, school lessons, and even television programs, to familiarize people with the new coins. The 10 new pence, because of its value and continuity with the florin, was central to that process. From a numismatic perspective, the 1971 issue is not rare, since millions were struck for circulation to ensure smooth adoption of decimalization. However, it holds tremendous historical importance. Collectors often value it as part of the first decimal series, which represents the initial step into modern currency. Proof sets and uncirculated specimens from 1971 are especially desirable, as they preserve the designs in pristine detail. Circulated examples are common and usually worth only face value, but they remain highly collectible for those building historical typesets of British coinage. Over time, the 10 new pence coin underwent significant changes. For nearly 2 decades after 1971, it retained its large size and weight. But in 1992, the Royal Mint introduced a much smaller and lighter version, reducing the diameter to 24.5 millimeters and the weight to 6.5 grams. This change made the original large 10p coins, including the 1971 issue, obsolete. They were gradually withdrawn from circulation, although they remained legal tender until 1993. Today, holding a 1971 10 new pence coin feels quite striking. Its heft and size are a reminder of an earlier era in British currency. Culturally, the coin reflects a fascinating balance of old and new. On one hand, It represents modernization and reform, a radical departure from centuries of tradition, aligning Britain with the decimal systems used by much of the world. On the other hand, its design elements, the lion passant, the Latin titulature, the royal portrait, firmly anchored in continuity and heritage. It embodies the idea that even in times of change, national identity and tradition remain integral. For those who lived through the changeover, the coin evokes nostalgia, the jingling of the heavy silver-colored pieces, the novelty of new money, and the memory of decimal day itself. In conclusion, the Elizabeth II DG Reg FD 1971 10U Pence coin is much more than a monetary token. It is a tangible piece of history, bridging the gap between Britain's medieval-rooted currency system and the streamlined decimal structure of today. With its bold lion design by Christopher Ironside, its elegant Arnold Machin portrait of the Queen, and its role as a direct descendant of the florin. The Elizabeth II DG Reg FD 1992 10U Pence coin carries with it both continuity and radical change. Its obverse inscription, Elizabeth II D times G times Reg times F times D times 1992, is a familiar Latin titulature meaning Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, Queen, Defender of the Faith. This legend has long accompanied monarchs on coinage, serving as a reminder of the Queen's dual roles as constitutional sovereign and religious head of the Church of England. However, while the wording and overall design conventions remain the same, the 1992 coin marked a major transformation in the physical character of the 10p. The coin was made smaller for the very first time in its history. Before 1992, the 10U pence was a large coin measuring 28.5 millimeters in diameter and weighing 11.31 grams, struck in cupro-nickel, 75% copper, 25% nickel. This specification had been deliberately chosen in 1968 to match the earlier florin 2-shilling coin, so that people could use a new decimal 10p interchangeably with older money. For more than 2 decades, these large 10p coins were familiar in circulation. However, as inflation steadily reduced the coin's purchasing power, its large size became increasingly impractical. By the late 1980s, the Royal Mint concluded that such a heavy coin was unnecessary for a denomination of relatively low value. Thus, in 1992, the decision was taken to reduce the size of the 10p coin. The new small 10p introduced in 1992 measured just 24.5 millimeters in diameter and weighed only 6.5 grams, still struck in cupro-nickel but drastically lighter and more convenient to carry. This reduction mirrored a similar change to the 5p coin in 1990, which had been shrunk from the size of a shilling to a much smaller format. Importantly, both old and new 10p coins circulated together for a short time, but the large-sized coins were gradually withdrawn and demonetized in 1993. This meant that the 1992 issue was historically the first year of the new small-sized 10p, and therefore holds a special place in numismatic history. On the obverse head side of the 1992 coin is a familiar portrait of Queen Elizabeth II by Raphael McLough, introduced in 1985. This effigy, known as the third definitive portrait, depicts a queen wearing the George IV state diadem, an ornate crown encrusted with diamonds and pearls, which he traditionally wore during the state opening of Parliament. McLough's design emphasized a more mature monarch, with carefully modeled features and a dignified expression. Around her image runs a Latin inscription with the date. For many collectors, the 1992 coin is memorable precisely because it combines McLough's portrait with a new, smaller module, a visible change in British money that people experience directly in their pockets. On the reverse, tail side of the coin, the design by Christopher Ironside remained unchanged from the earlier larger coins. It features the lion passant guardant, the heraldic lion of England, a powerful medieval emblem of strength, dignity, and sovereignty. The lion walks to the left, with its right forepaw raised and its head turned toward the viewer. This symbol had been used on the royal arms of England since the 12th century, and its presence on the 10p carried forward that deep heritage. The denomination is shown as the word 10 pence above the lion and the number 10 below. Unlike the earliest decimal issues, which from 1968 to 1981 had carried the inscription New Pence, the wording had been simplified in 1982 to just 10 pence. Thus, the 1992 issue is part of this later phase of decimal coinage, where the emphasis was on permanence and clarity rather than transition. The edge of the 1992 coin, like its predecessor, is milled reeded, providing a tactile grip and linking the coin to the long-standing traditions of British silver coinage. The smaller coin was far more convenient to handle, reducing weight in purses, wallets, and vending machines. For many members of the public, the change was initially surprising. People had grown used to the large 10p for over 20 years, but it was soon accepted as part of the wider movement to modernize coinage. In terms of historical context, the 1992 10p was part of a larger effort in Britain and elsewhere to streamline coinage. Rising metal costs and the falling value of small denominations pushed many countries to adopt smaller, lighter coins. The United Kingdom, in particular, had already introduced smaller 5p coins in 1990, and the new 10p in 1992 was a logical continuation of that policy. Later, in 1997, even the 50p was reduced in size. These changes reflected the reality that convenience and efficiency in coinage design had to evolve alongside economic changes. From a numismatic perspective, the 1992 small 10p coin is historically significant but not rare in circulation. Millions were struck, ensuring that the new denomination was widely available. Collectors, however, value it as a first-year-of-issue piece, the very first of the smaller 10p coins, marking the turning point in Britain's modern coinage. Proof and uncirculated versions from 1992, particularly those issued in mint sets, are sought after for their pristine condition, as they preserve both the McClure portrait and iron-sized heraldic lion in sharp detail. Circulated examples are common, but they remain historically important to anyone assembling a full decimal typeset. Culturally, the change to a smaller 10p was a moment that many people remember. It symbolized a Britain adapting to modern needs, lightening the load in people's change, modernizing vending machines and tills, and quietly acknowledging that the coin no longer held the purchasing power it once did. Yet at the same time, the continued use of the lion passing garden connected the coin with centuries of national identity, ensuring that while the physical form changed, the cultural symbolism remained steadfast. Looking back, the Elizabeth II DG Reg FD 1992 10U Pence coin is both a practical object and a symbol of reform. It represents the balance between tradition and change. The Queen's dignified portrait, the heraldic lion, and the Latin titles reflect continuity, while the reduced size and weight demonstrate adaptation to modern economic realities. For historians, it marks a moment when Britain took the next logical step in its decimal journey, streamlining coinage for a new age. For collectors, it is a first of its kind, the beginning of the small 10p era that still continues today.